So welcome, friends, to this Wednesday evening Dhamma discussion and meditation. So last week, pretty much, we finished reviewing the 5 spiritual faculties, and we mentioned how there's also a category called the 5 spiritual powers, but they refer to the same 5 qualities of the mind: faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. And I mentioned in the mailing I sent out at the beginning of the week that we're going to discuss about the balancing these faculties, spiritual faculties. Now, so there's the faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. They have to be balanced. And there's 2 groups that sort of especially need to be balanced. And mindfulness is sort of the balancer. So those 2, the faith, as we mentioned, has 3 levels of faith. There's the initial or excited level when you first hear the Dhamma and get inspired and have a lot of enthusiasm to want to practice meditation. But after some time, after people realize, well, maybe I'm not going to get enlightenment in 7 days or 3 months or even 3 years, that initial excited faith kind of wears down and becomes just a long enduring faith. You resign the fact that, after you've seen how many defilements are in your mind, how much greed, hatred, and delusion and ego, then you realize that it may take a little longer. So you kind of resign yourself to kind of just doing the Dhamma practice, as you could say, a lifelong practice. So that's what we call the enduring faith. But at some point, depending on how much you practice and how much effort you put into it, of course, then if you may attain the paths and the fruits, or the deep insights leading to those levels of entering the stream and above. So, and that would be the unshakable faith. Now, the faith has to be balanced with the wisdom. And we mentioned there's 3 levels of wisdom, which is the intellectual wisdom that normally people get first. You read, and that's what actually gets your faith going. Like in my example, for when I first started studying, read about Buddhism in the world religions class, and I never heard about meditation or, karma and about the greed, hatred, and delusion in the mind. Never really reflected on that, but then when I read those initial teachings on the 4 Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, and meditation, then I got some faith. I can actually do something about my mind, about changing my mind and not having to wait for somebody else to do it or to be saved, so to speak. So anyway, that's just one example. So the first level of wisdom is the intellectual wisdom that most of us, how we, initially hear about the Dhamma. So that first level of faith and the first level of wisdom are kind of connected in that way. And then the second level of faith, the enduring level, is is equated to the second level of wisdom, which is the reflective wisdom. So after you initially get some initial understanding of the Dhamma, you have to go on thinking about it and reflecting about it, in your meditation, but as well as your daily life. You're reflecting on how, the mind gets caught up in greed, hatred, and delusion, and how it, creates difficulties for you, and because of that, you create some unskillful karma, you break the precepts and so on. So the more you reflect on it in your daily life, helps you, and as you keep trying to correct yourself, then that you see the benefits of the daily practice. So that enduring faith, the reflective wisdom, helps to keep your faith at least on a moderate level, keeps you from giving up totally. So it keeps you plugging away at the practice, even though you find it difficult, or sometimes you stop practicing for a while, and you come back to it, and so on. And then the third level of faith, which is the unshakable level of faith, which is the hallmark of entering the stream. Once one really gets the deepest insights into emptiness or no self and impermanence, and we reach that point of entering the stream, the first sort of real glimpse of transcendence and the dissolution of the ego consciousness, then that faith becomes unshakable. And that is the third level of wisdom, the wisdom that actually transforms the consciousness from the ordinary state into the state of more permanent levels of understanding and awareness. So, but faith and wisdom on another level, they have to be balanced, because some people have what is called maybe blind faith. Let's say people born in Buddhist countries who are born Buddhists, and they're taught as they're a child to have faith in the Buddha, and they're brought to the temples and learn how to bow to the Buddha images and light the candles and flowers. And so they have this, what some people may call a blind faith. That means they haven't really contemplated the Dhamma too much. It's something inherited, you might say, from the family or the society and so on. So that level of faith, that needs to be balanced with wisdom. If there's too much faith, then again the practice will stagnate. It won't go to deeper levels in terms of, unless it motivates you to meditate. So the key point is the faith motivating you to actually start meditation on a more kind of systematic and a regular way, and developing that deeper understanding, or the need to practice the Dhamma, not just being a Buddhist in name, but actually practicing it, especially the practice of meditation. So, and some people, especially Westerners, they hear about meditation from different sources, or they hear about the idea of enlightenment or samadhi. That's a big topic these days. Samadhi, wow. And so they just want to practice meditation and, somehow, get something they think is samadhi. But they may not have much faith, in terms of faith as we define it, as faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, or having confidence in the teaching. So that also, that sort of dry wisdom, the faith helps to keep the wisdom from being too dry, or people might become proud of their intellectual understanding of the Dhamma and so on. and thinking, we don't need the Buddha. Who's the Buddha? All we need is the Dhamma. And that may be true on a deeper level, because actually we've understood that the Buddha is the Dhamma and the Dhamma is the Buddha. But nevertheless, people can get too much caught up in the intellectual aspects, in their heart can be kind of hard, towards others, for example. So the faith and both faith and the wisdom need to be balanced, so that faith in the Buddha is supported and balanced by the wisdom. So the faith doesn't get mushy. Some people have so much faith and they always want to bow to the Buddha images and bow to the Buddha images and do all this, but not really getting the deeper benefits. So balancing the faith and the wisdom, that is, and of course we do that through the practice of mindfulness. Mindfulness is the fulcrum. And we'll come back to that later. But now the other two groups are the energy and the concentration. And so there's also those have to be balanced. Some people, now the energy means, or sometimes it's balance called concentration and wisdom. But the energy, if the mind is too excited, then it might not become concentrated enough to gain concentration, or to gain those levels of jhanic awareness, as we mentioned. So a lot of people get a lot of energy to practice, and they might be running around and trying to go into all the different meditation groups, or they're reading too many different things that maybe create some confusions in their mind and so on, and they're not focusing the mind, not becoming concentrated in the practice, so it can get scattered. So the concentration helps to balance that overly energetic mind. And also, if you become too concentrated, it can make the mind kind of dull. And I'm talking about if you get concentrated and the mind becomes very, very calm, and it's just becomes very silent, and nothing is no longer, disturbing the mind. And a person could stay in that state of tranquility for, a long period of time, some hours or even longer. But it doesn't have the energy to come out and contemplate anicca, dukkha, and anatta. So that is why sometimes the energy is referred to as the energy in, let's say, contemplating, in being overly mindful of being too alert and too mindful of things. If it's not balanced with the concentration, that mindfulness can also be kind of erratic if it's not balanced with the concentration. So the energy, concentration helps to moderate that energetic mind and make it more focused and make it more tranquil, so that it can then really tune in and develop the wisdom of and penetrating the impermanence, and developing the wisdom of no self, the three characteristics. So the concentration helps to moderate the energy, and the energy helps to keep the concentration from becoming too concentrated and just stuck in the jhana. Because there's something that happens when people they have this obsession with attaining jhana, and they get so absorbed in an object of meditation, they lose feelings of everything around, and they just want to stay kind of absorbed in this deep tranquility and mental quiet. And that may have a lot of good things, but it's a kind of it can be a dead end. And so the energy, the effort not to get stuck in that, but to use that concentration for developing developing mindfulness, developing the 4 foundations of mindfulness, and especially the perception of impermanence, and leading to the experience of the no self, the ego fading away. So again, it's the mindfulness that sits in the middle. So these two, those faith and wisdom, energy and concentration, those are the 2 things that need to be balanced. And mindfulness is sitting in the middle. And we mentioned that one of the definitions of meditation means keeping the mind in the middle. And mindfulness is what helps to keep the mind in the middle, and not becoming too energetic that the mind becomes kind of scattered, and not becoming too quiet and peaceful where the mind doesn't want to contemplate the anicca, dukkha, anatta, or to develop the vipassana level of awareness. And it sits in the balance between the energy, the faith, and the wisdom. So that's what I wanted to mention about those, the balancing those. And if any of you have any questions about that, if you want to write them down in the chat box, then you can do that. And also there's some questions, 3 different questions have come up from people who have sent me emails or text with certain questions. And actually this one question concerns the practice of mindfulness that we've already been mentioning. Mindfulness is that fulcrum that keeps the mind balanced, that helps to balance the other faculties. And this question is, in one of my talks in the last week or so, I mentioned that I described mindfulness as being in the present moment. Now that is one aspect of mindfulness, but there are other aspects of mindfulness too. The mind that's in the present moment, being aware of things as they are coming and going from moment to moment. But this person is asking questions in my book, the Masterful Teachings of the Buddha, that we are kind of going through. In that chapter on developing the mind, it refers, or it mentioned, that the power of mindfulness is remembering well and keeping in mind what has been said and done long ago. So that's also an aspect of mindfulness. It means to remember, but to remember the present moment. Although it does have a factor of remembering, other things that you've heard too, especially remembering the Dhamma. So bringing the Dhamma bringing it to mind, like in your daily life, remembering the Dhamma, being mindful of your actions and thoughts, and being mindful of the consequences of perhaps indulging in your certain negative thoughts, and being mindful of that, so you can hopefully, refrain from doing something maybe that you would regret later. So, but mindfulness means remembering the present moment, And in that remembering the present moment, it has the aspect about wisdom. Now, mindfulness, of course, is described in the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So, and how to practice mindfulness. So even being mindful of the hindrances, in fact. So one is mindful when ill will arises in the mind, but then one understands also how this ill will has arisen, how does it continue, and how will it cease. So this means remembering the aspects of Dhamma about it, realizing, the nature of the various phenomena that are coming through our senses. Like if you hear a sound, remembering, okay, this is just a sound vibration. This is a perception arising in the mind, not just immediately reacting to the sound with liking or disliking and so on. So the mindfulness requires the clear comprehension if it's to be called right mindfulness. So we're talking about right mindfulness again. And the Buddha always qualified the steps of the Eightfold Path as, samma sati, samma ditti, as opposed to just mindfulness or just concentration, but it has to be right mindfulness and right concentration. So that's where the wisdom comes into play, understanding how we use those aspects of the mind, mindfulness, concentration, wisdom, energy, how they all are, how they interconnect and interreact in the practice of the Dhamma, because that's what the whole teaching of the Buddha was about. So anyway, the practice of mindfulness means especially being mindful of the present moment, but at the same time remembering things that you've learned connected with about what you're about to do. If you're about to tell a lie, then you remember, telling lies may get me in trouble. So you reflect on it. And so hopefully you would say, okay, I'm not going to tell a lie now, but tell the truth. Or any number of so many kind of actions. Okay, so that was one question. Now, this another question, before I actually get into the question, it refers to the sort of the popular expression, it's like the chicken or the egg question, which came first, the chicken or the egg. So this question, which comes first, experience or existence? Now, this particular question, this person has asked, because he had read in one book that I had recommended people to read, a book by Venerable Punaji, in which he says, experience precedes existence. And so you could say, which comes first, existence or experience? Or experience and existence. Now, different people might choose one or the other of those, as from their own experience. Well, you have to exist first before you can have experience. But this question refers to something very deep. So anyway, Venerable Punaji, he has states that the experience precedes existence. Now, we have to understand what existence is. It refers to the feeling that one is existing, or the subject-object experience. You experience something, or you exist. But to keep it simple, it's referring to basically the subject-object awareness, or your the feeling that I am existing, or these things exist. And there was even a question brought to the Buddha. People asked him, Do things exist or do they not exist? And the Buddha didn't, he said they neither exist nor neither do not exist. But the question is, how do they exist? Anyway, these are kind of mental conundrums that people can get into. But it refers to, the experience refers to the basic awareness. You could say more just the pure awareness or experiencing. It's the sensory contact. So you have sensory contact and, there is awareness arises. Now, the existence comes in when you identify, yourself as the experiencer, and then the conditioning of the mind arises. And then you break up existence into so many different types of categories. So the experience that is mentioning in the book refers to just the pure sensory experience, which could be, you could see as being just the present moment awareness before the mind has created those sensory vibrations into objects and the sense of I am experiencing that. Now, the Buddha also, sometimes that's called being, bhava. And somebody asked the Buddha that in one of the suttas. It says, a being, people say a being, what is this being? The Buddha said it's being caught by the five aggregates. So it means being identified with form, feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness. And that is the Buddha's definition of a being. And that would be existence, because when you're identifying with the five aggregates, basically that's your existence. You're taking them for self. You're taking them for being I, me, or mine. And we create our world of existence through the mental process. So experience is sort of before that individualized mental process has sort of solidified itself around certain objects that we identify with and then we struggle with. It's a very deep subject. It's not something that's easy to explain, and only people who have reached quite deep levels of concentration and mindfulness, concentration, wisdom, they're able to perceive or these subtle differences, and to understand these subtle differences. Now, let's see if there is looks like there's something that's come up in the chat box. Maybe some other question. What this question with regards to these factors, these five spiritual faculties, how does one achieve this mindfulness balance in practice? Say you find yourself meditating and the mind is in the deep tranquil state, very concentrated. How do you welcome in energy? Well, instead of just sort of absorbing in that tranquility, you start paying attention. That means you start noticing the subtler sensations, or how quickly the sensory impingements are coming through the senses. So that's really the six-fold sense sphere. You expand the awareness. So in concentration, you tend to narrow the attention down, let's say to just your breath, or it could be some other object, a candle flame or something, but usually people are doing the anapanasati. And especially if you're focusing at the tip of the nose, and you might get that little nimitta and you focus on that, and you kind of basically, you pretty much lose awareness of things that are going on around you, and you enter this very deep, tranquil state of mind, which you call jhana. But in the jhana, the mind should be alert and clear. But a lot of people, if that energy isn't there, they allow the mind to kind of sink into too much quiet, becomes too much quiet, so that you cannot really notice things arising and vanishing through the other senses. And it depends on how you've developed that concentration. So, therefore, once you reach that tranquil state, you open up a bit, and that's why the Buddha in the Four Foundations of Mindfulness, he starts with the mindfulness of breathing, but he doesn't stop there. After you've sort of overcome the hindrances and the mind has become centered, without allowing the mind to fall into a sort of a more blank state or too much deep quietness, you start paying attention, feeling the body. And so the Buddha has you start feeling the body and knowing when you're sitting, knowing when you're standing. How do you know it? By feeling the sensations. That's how you know anything. It's through sensations. So anyway, you have to kind of give that energy to open up the mind a bit, and not just to kind of stay in that deep inner quiet, and deliberately open up to the flow of impermanence. And so, like contemplating the four elements, 32 body parts, and the four elements, as you're doing those further aspects of mindfulness of the body, that gets you out of the breathing so much and in more into this active awareness, a more expanded awareness, but it's still concentrated. And it allows you to see how quickly, all the sensations are changing in the body. The body is just millions of cells and molecules that are constantly rising and vanishing, and you pay attention to painful and pleasant sensations, learning how to endure pain more. And you observe your thoughts. The Four Foundations of Mindfulness is a gradual development of expanding that field of attention to include all the aspects of the body and the mind. So that's basically how you do that. You have to follow the Four Foundations of Mindfulness. And the problem is that people are practicing, what they call samadhi. Most of them have this idea of just getting into this deep, tranquil state, and oh, that's enough for me. And a lot of them don't get out and really start developing what we would call vipassana awareness and the perception of impermanence and so on. So let's this next question. Would you repeat the three wisdoms again? I missed the third one. I believe it's meditation and application of the Dhamma. It's the three levels of wisdom. It's the intellectual level. When you first start reading some books, you get some understanding. The Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Path, okay, yeah. And you can rattle them off, you might memorize them and so on, but you may not have meditated yet, or as you do, as you start meditating, then like the truth of suffering hits home, because now you're seeing how crazy your mind is. When you're just reading books and so on, and you're not really looking more directly into your mind, but when you meditate, you see how easily the mind has gotten, reacting to everything and its old habits. So that's the reflective wisdom. The second level is reflective wisdom, which comes from initial meditation and reflecting in your daily life too, when you're down the street, when you see something happen. Like the Buddha said, if you see a dead animal on the street, instead of going, ugh, say, oh, that could happen to me too. Death can happen at any time. Let me practice. Let me not sleep tonight. Let me go to sleep too early. Let me meditate tonight. Let me get up in the morning and meditate. That is the purpose of it. Is to that development of the wisdom is to apply it in the daily life, where you see people arguing in a supermarket. They're caught up in greed, hatred, and delusion. So you learn how to contemplate the Dhamma in your daily life, but first you have to, have at least some of that intellectual wisdom. And then, when you meditate, you'll be able to then apply that, and as you develop better, deeper concentration and mindfulness, the third level is actually the insights leading to the attainment of stream entry, once returning, never returning, and enlightenment or arahantship. So, can wisdom be gained by balancing the five faculties? Absolutely. That's the whole point. Yeah. And the last level of wisdom that I mentioned is when the energy to practice and also the concentration has to be developed to the level of jhanic level concentration, where the hindrances have been suppressed, and the mind becomes very alert and vibrant. And it's like a laser beam that can cut through the residual levels of the delusion that are there, and especially the ego, the thought of I, me, and mine. That is the sort of the last frontier of wisdom, is to break through that last subtle remnant of I and me. Because a person could develop meditation and they could get very calm and nothing would be bothering them. But the sense of I will still be there in the mind. Oh, I'm such a good meditator now. And so spiritual pride could arise. Oh, I'm better than them, and so on. But that's because of this, mana, or the pride is still there. Even in a never returner, the third stage of enlightenment, that mana is still there until the last stage of enlightenment. So it's a very insidious, deep and insidious defilement, the pride and conceit. Okay. Okay, friends, so those are very good questions. Now, there was one other question that came up, but it wasn't a question, it was a request. If I would incorporate the practice of forgiveness and metta in this evening's meditation. Now, for those who have been attending these Zoom sessions since I started doing it, at the beginning of the pandemic, I had been doing some metta meditation toward the end of the meditations. But recently I may not have been adding that on to the end of the meditations, but it's good to also do that. Now, forgiveness and metta, these are like two things. Metta is loving friendliness, but we can't have metta if we're still holding grudges and haven't forgiven people for their perceived wrongs against us, right? So that's why forgiveness is a very powerful practice, and it should be done every day, actually. Because when we're holding grudges against people, and they did this to me, they did it, and wanting to maybe plot revenge or just, having this ill will, right? Ill will is one of the 5 hindrances, and it comes from, these lingering resentments and not having forgiven people. So it festers in our mind and becomes ill will and can even be, hatred toward people if we haven't forgiven them. So forgiveness is actually something that can be practiced day by day. Whenever something happens to you, in that day itself, try to forgive the person. But we have to have some degree of Dhamma practice to be able to do that. And understanding that, we all make mistakes, right? And and knowing that, we're all sick until we've gained full enlightenment. We're all sick in one degree with greed, hatred, and delusion. So whenever something happens to you, and I mentioned this in doing the M&Ms, when you're practicing an M&M throughout the day, that means a minute of mindfulness. Whatever happened to you in the last hour, maybe somebody did something that you're upset with, forgive them there. Don't carry that into the next hour and let it fester in your mind. So, okay, you might have talked rough language to me or she, and maybe they had a difficult morning, and so they did this because they're unmindful. So you have to reflect on that and try to forgive people who might have done things that you consider wrong. So you don't carry it with you. That's the main thing. We carry all these things with us, and they fester inside, and that becomes, the the place from where stronger emotions, and then we act out of those. So anyway, we'll do that. We'll try to incorporate that in the beginning of our meditation this evening. So let's go ahead and take a short break, as we normally do, and then come back in a few minutes, do some yoga stretches, and then have our meditation practice. Okay? So we'll see you back in a few minutes. And this evening, we're going to start the meditation by practicing forgiveness and metta for ourselves and other beings. First of all, just to try to get comfortable in your sitting posture. To sit straight, aligning the spine and back of the head. Just gently close your eyes. Just feel the eyes and the socket. And the eyelid stretched over the eyeball. And from that point, behind the eyes, again, try to feel the outline of the sitting body. It's kind of just watching your body sitting there from the inside. Try to relax your face muscle. Relax the shoulders. Feel your hands and fingers touching together. Feel the buttocks pressing the seat. Feel your feet and toes. Feel those subtle life force sensations, pulsation. Just remind yourself of sitting, sitting. Let the awareness kind of come back up to the body to rest on the eyes again. Just try to feel that outline of the whole body. Just sort of look upon your own sitting body with the eye of compassion, and just reflecting on your life, or maybe today or from the past, anybody that you're holding any resentments toward, any ill feelings, somebody that you're kind of keeping out of your heart. Somebody you have trouble forgiving, something they might have done or said to you, or to one of your friends. And just try to recall, maybe it was an argument you might have had, or maybe it starts with some sort of arguments, unpleasant words or actions. Just try to recall that general experience with that person. Without assigning blame, just recall the general circumstance. And try to bring that person's face up in your mind. If you can, look them in the face. Just picture their face. And look into their eyes. See, we had this argument, we had this misunderstanding. Whatever I might have done in that to cause you any discomfort or ill feelings, please forgive me for anything I might have done or said to you that added to that situation. I did that because of my own unmindfulness. My own self-centeredness. You find it in yourself to forgive me. Trying to work on myself, to be a new person, a better person. Please forgive me for anything I might have done. Even if it's difficult, please forgive me. And having taken the first step in asking for their forgiveness, even though you may not have thought you did something, just to break the ice, get them to reflect and look into their eyes and say, I forgive you for anything I imagine that you did to me. I forgive you for that. I know you're not a bad person. We're all affected by our attachments, aversions, opinions. I forgive you for anything you might have done that I think that you had done. Please forgive me, or I forgive you. Even if it hurts, just dig deep, I forgive you. And now I'm having them, asking them to forgive you and you forgiving them. Now we need to also forgive ourselves. Some people beat themselves over things that they have done, holding low esteem for themselves, or blaming themselves. Yes, we all make mistakes. We have to learn to forgive ourselves also. Knowing that we're all like little babies learning how to walk, take a few steps, fall down, we have to get back up, keep moving, keep growing. Just look inside of yourself and just forgive yourself. Just look into your own face. I forgive you. We'll try to be better in the future by developing more mindfulness, more awareness, more discipline, to keep from repeating the same mistakes over. Now, having released the burden of this, holding that ill will or resentment towards others or even oneself, and let us send out thoughts of metta, friendliness, kindness, best wishes, thoughts for self and all other beings. Just continue to kind of just feel or observe your own body and mind sitting there. Just cultivate these thoughts toward yourself. May I be well, peaceful and wise. May I be free from excessive attachment and greed, anger and hatred, self-centered ignorance. May I be free from the pains and sufferings of body and mind brought about by such unskillful thoughts, speech, and actions. May I have the patience and strength, the mindfulness and the wisdom to meet and overcome all difficulties in life. May I be able to continue to deepen my understanding of the Dhamma, to balance the spiritual faculty, to help free the mind from residual greed, hatred, and delusion. May I be well, peaceful, and wise. Again, that person that you had forgiven earlier, even if that person might even be already dead, he may be still existing in samsara, might be able to hear your words. Send these metta thoughts toward them, in general, all persons that may have done something to you in the past when you've hurt them. Just wishing may all of you be well, happy, and peaceful, free from greed, hatred, fear, and ignorance, free from self-created pains and sufferings of body and mind, brought about by unskillful thought, speech, and action. May they also have the patience, strength, mindfulness, and wisdom to meet and overcome all difficulties in life. If they haven't already, may they also be able to hear the teachings of the Dhamma and undertake the practice of Dhamma and meditation to help free their minds from the bonds of karmic created suffering and ignorance. May all of them be well, peaceful, and wise. Now, in just more of a general way, you can tune in to your breathing with each out breath, or you can feel your heartbeat. You can imagine with each heartbeat or pulse or out breath, just imagine the same metta thoughts, waves of friendliness, kindness, thought vibrations going outward, out to everybody in your household, the neighborhood, across the cities, countryside. With each out breath or heartbeat, just imagine these waves of metta vibrations going further and further outward, across the whole state, eventually the whole country, eventually extending those metta radiations out across the whole earth and beyond. So with each heartbeat, with each out breath, the waves of metta extending further and further out, imagining them permeating the bodies and minds of all the beings, soothing the fires of greed, hatred, and delusion, soothing the pains of their physical and mental suffering. So the idea that may all living beings, wherever they might be, living far or near, weak or the strong, rich or the poor, famous or the obscure, may all living beings be well, happy and peaceful, free from greed, hatred, fear, and ignorance, free from the pains and sufferings of body and mind brought about by their unskillful thought, speech, and action through the interactions with others. May all beings have the patience, strength, mindfulness, and wisdom to meet and overcome all difficulties in life. If they haven't already, may they also have the opportunity to hear the mind-healing teachings of the Dhamma, to learn and practice meditation, to cultivate the spiritual faculty, to help free their minds from confusion and suffering. May all beings be able to live peacefully and harmoniously together, understanding the ultimate interconnectedness and interdependence of all things. May all beings be well, peaceful, and wise. May all beings be well, peaceful, and wise. It's like a mantra reverberating throughout space. Well, peaceful, and wise. Stay with that feeling as long as you can. Just gradually come back to feel the breathing body, tune back into the breathing, the life force vibration. The mind loses its awareness. I can take a few deep, slow breaths. Recharge up the bloodstream, the awareness. Stay awake, centered in the body. Dukkha pata chani dukkha bhayapata chani bhaya sokapata chani sokha Ontu sabbi pipaninu. May the suffering be free from suffering. May the fear struck be free from fear. May the grieving be free from grief. In this way may all beings live with mindfulness and wisdom. And thus spoke the Buddha. Now mindfully place your hands at the edge of your knees. And take a deep, slow breath. On the in-breath, stretch your head back, pull the hands on the knees to arch your spine. And lift the head up on an in-breath. In the out-breath, press the chin to the top of the chest to stretch the neck vertebra. Lift the chin up level on an in-breath. And relax on the out-breath. And I invite you to join in chanting the word sadhu 3 times. Slowly do the chanting sadhu on a long out-breath. Try to feel those vibrations in the body and mind. Just take a deep breath. Okay, friends, so this brings our evening Dhamma and meditation to an end. But again, mindfulness should never end. During this next week,